All right, so now it's on to the drop synths. So basically, I like to sort of do these separately from standard synths as they kind of sit differently sonically and within the, I guess, the storyboard, I'll say, of the song or the structure of the song. It's the climactic point. So I like to process them a bit differently. So first off, I'm going to kind of start with a beginning hit to the drop, which the drop's basically sitting right here, as you can tell by the two layered subs right here that we did in the previous tutorial. So I'm going to start by making a new MIDI channel and going to my kit. And I'm going to start by bringing in a brass hit that I created. So really like the sound of that. It's nice and wide. Some upper harmonics on it and everything. But unwarp it. Make sure you unwarp and unsnap one shots as is, just because you don't want it to be affecting the sound and adding unwanted artifacts to the sample. So we're going to start off by adding a MIDI clip here, seeing where the bass is. As you can tell, I froze the bass just for safety purposes, just in case I don't lose any of the presets, because I kind of have nightmare stories of that happening to me with basically every plugin. So generally shouldn't happen, but sometimes it does. So it kind of just worries me. But anyway, so I'm gonna start by following this bass hit right here, and actually, what you could do is just copy this down here and let's see if this is in the right note. So I can tell this isn't an F. So what I like to do sometimes if I can't figure out the note that it's in, which in this case I know what it is because like basically I previously wrote this track. So what I like to do though is add a tuner and play the notes until I guess in this circumstance this is working, but generally what you can do is play the sample until you can find the note that it's in, and whether it says C or D or F or whatever, you can tune it to the initial C, and then basically copy down whatever MIDI you need to copy in or draw in the proper key. So in this case, I'm just going to pitch this down a whole step. So now it's matching the F of that sub. So let's see here. I think just bring this up. So now it's a lot more present here. Right. So next I'm going to add overdrive just to bring out more harmonics in that brass hit. So in this case, I'm not going to do anything to the overdrive. Kind of like how that sounds. This is what I usually do with brass samples most of the time. I'll just like have one instance of overdrive just stock on there. So yeah, it's basically every first hit of each of the sections, it's going to just start there. So it's going to be like. And then at this turnaround, I want it to follow the MIDI of this as well. So I'm just going to drop this down here. There we go. So then duplicate this over again. And right where that fill goes, I'm just going to delete this right here. All right, so next I'm going to, just for sort of an effect and more of an impact to this brass sound, what I'm going to do is copy this out here. And you'll tend to hear this effect a lot, what I'm about to do, in so much music. It's basically just a reverse reverb effect. The way you achieve that is, in a lot of instances, you will take just like a standard reverb from Ableton Live. I like to put the quality on high just so it shines the most. You know, I mean, it's not a big difference, but personally, I kind of like everything being as high quality as I can get it. So I set the quality to high as opposed to the eco or the mid. So bring the dry wet up to about 95, so it's mostly washed out Let's just hear how that sounds. So the decay time's not enough to get that sort of effect, in my opinion. I mean, it would be a very short one, so I kind of want to bring this up to more like, yeah, that's a bit better. Maybe a bit more, because I mean, it doesn't really matter too much how high you have it, because you can always, when you resample it, just adjust the fade of it so it can fade in more, fade out, or whatever you need it to do. So I'm going to freeze the track. Just take a second and create a new track. Drag this down, double click, and then reverse it. It's basically how you get that sort of reverse reverb, reverse brass sound here. So it'll sound something like this. Yeah. Then what I'm going to do is kind of copy and paste this throughout the song at kind of each impactful moment that I'd like to put it at. So first and foremost, I'll put it at the drop. And I kind of like this little attack at the end here to sort of meet up with the initial hit. Maybe not that much, but maybe like that, and then adjust the fade a bit. Just so it kind of fades out with it, and it'll just cleanly just mix into that next thing as a nice transitional effect. This effect very much helps for building, like I keep saying, building impact and building kind of each section of your song and making everything flow a bit better. So I just kind of like having this technique utilized in that way. Bring this down a little quieter than the initial sound because you don't want it to overpower it at all. As you can tell, there's still reverb on that, so I need to take that off. And this, to me, sounds a little bit like that attack is kind of, you can tell the volume right here, is you can see with the wave shape that it's kind of coming down a little bit, so I'm going to drag it a bit more in. There we go. So, cool. So, I'm going to copy this over to that second part there, and then the end here. Have it start at the first verse here. It's gonna come in, kind of make you expect something. It'll kind of hint at what is to come in later in the song. So I'm gonna copy it over before this section as well. It's basically the build. Cool. So I know this is less of a drop synth and more of a transitional effect, but I felt like, you know, it would be good to utilize a part of the drop synth to create a transitional effect. So I'm just going to put this throughout the rest of the song. One more right here. And I'm going to keep this in the drop synth group for future reference. So next I'm going to create a growl that kind of sits under the brass. And I know it may seem like there's a lot going on with that first hit, but I feel like it's very important to make sure that hit has a lot of impact so it can be very expressive of the entire sort of drop. I feel like it's important to have a lot kind of going on right there. But we'll make sure to have everything sit well with each other in the EQing and in the compression and mixing and mastering. So what I'm going to do is load up an instance of Anna 2, which is Sonic Academy's new soft synth. Very good soft synth. I'm definitely a big fan of using it. So I do a lot of simplistic sound design. I feel like the more simple, the better in a lot of ways. I feel like when you overcomplicate your patches, gets a bit out of hand a lot of times. I mean, you know, do what you want to do, you know, but me personally, I like keeping things simple, you know, generally one waveform, occasional FM here and there, but in this case, I'm just going to start with a sawtooth. I'm going to bring down this amp envelope here just so that release isn't drawn out at all. And literally all I'm kind of doing with this is sending this to a filter, which I'm going to be using a, looks like let's see, let me find this one. All past 6 poles, yeah. So then with that, I'm going to bring the resonance up pretty high, so we can kind of start to hear that. So you can kind of hear it's resembling sort of like a growl, like a distorted sort of growl. You can kind of assume could happen. Right. So I'm going to bring the drive up a bit to about the 12 o'clock point. Add more of a resonance to that. Then I personally like doing a lot of post-processing as well. So like I said, the more simple you keep it in the synth, the more you can kind of do with the post-processing. That's how I've always felt, at least. I mean, everyone kind of has their own sort of things they like doing. You know, some people like doing everything internal. Some people like doing things post-processing. But, you know, I kind of like a nice combination of both here and there. I like being experimental, like I've said before. So in this case, I'm going to start off by opening up an overdrive, kind of the stock setting. To kind of get that distorted feel with it. So you hear that growl more so now. So next what I'm going to do is add a saturator to add more harmonics to the sound and sort of distort it even more than it already is. Let's see. So change this to soft sine. I'm a huge fan of soft sine. It kind of just adds a nice top harmonic onto things and almost like broadens the warmth of the sound. And again, I'm going to put soft clip on to sort of limit it a little bit. It's kind of a dynamic limiter. I don't know if that's fully accurate, but that's kind of how it sounds in my head. It feels like it kind of keeps everything at 0, but doesn't squash it too much like a standard limiter might do. So. Right, so basically after that, just kind of generally keep this as is, pretty stock, and then I'm going to add another EQ, again enabling the oversampling mode at first, then doing a low cut with a soft curve, and then bringing down a little bit of the mids to have the rest of the brass and that 808 shine through a bit more. So yeah, let's see what this sounds like. Get that wheel of death going on right there. Right, so that sounds pretty cool. That sounds pretty growly, you know. So I'm going to basically do this on all the hits that the brass was hitting on, but alongside with the brass, I'm gonna make sure this hits on these notes as well. So it's not every time it turns around. It's gonna be basically every 2 bars. So I'm just gonna start by copying and pasting this down to this. Let's see if this is obviously not the right note right there. So I'm going to make sure to drag in one of these guys. Basically, sometimes if you're feeling lazy like me, I like to go to the MIDI effects and just add in a pitch, just to kind of like, as opposed to consolidating this. Because as you can tell, sometimes if you consolidate MIDI clip, it'll kind of mess up your MIDI notes because these are extended out. But to avoid that, I just kind of like throwing the pitch on and shifting down octaves by holding shift and going up or down with the arrow keys. So you can tell negative 36 steps is, or negative 36 half steps is where it's supposed to be. So next I'm going to go back to Anna 2, and then just move this little cutoff right here just so we can implement that growl automation on each of these hits. So it's all kind of trial and error in terms of kind of getting this to sound right. So I feel like this is sounding pretty good. Shorten the tack on that. So I'm going to copy this automation to each of these. And once it gets to that turnaround point right there, which is what the brass does, I'm just going to kind of keep it static and maybe move it a little bit. Like I said, I'm going to duplicate this over so it's hitting more than the brass. So you can kind of experiment around with the filter shape and what you're kind of doing with it within the automation to kind of get different sounds from what you're trying to achieve. But for now, I'm just going to kind of keep it a similar consistency with each growl. Okay, so basically should be good to duplicate this over to the second half as well. So let's hear how this sounds in context with everything else. So I feel like the growl is sticking out a little bit too much, so I'm going to actually readjust these down so they're a little more static. There we go. Sounds a bit better, so I just duplicate these over to each of these. And the more we mix this down with sidechain compression and everything, the more glued together it'll sound. So right now things might kind of stand out, but do not be concerned because it will be fixed over time. I'm going to bring this down maybe like 1 decibel. So it still kind of shines through, but it's a little quieter. Right, so I copied that over to the second drop. Right, so I'm going to do the same with the brass as well, just so we can keep this consistency going here. Just kind of have another listen here to see how this stuff sounds. Starting to sound like an actual song now. Now we've sort of added those turnaround elements within the drop synths, and we're layering each part onto each of the sections. So next, what we're going to do, I'm going to create a very interesting lead. In the last year, I've really been intrigued by almost an FX style of sound design. So basically what I mean by that is you sort of use the synth itself as more of an exciter and more of a thing to fuel the FX. And the effects are more just, it's more prominent than the actual like oscillator per se. So what's actually making the real noise is the effects. And you'll hear this a lot in like a lot of like Hero Bust and a lot of the like the new sort of sound of this hybrid trap feel that people are trying to go for. So, and I'm personally a big fan of it. It's basically using phasers and flangers and the chorus to kind of get this insane sort of metallic sound almost. So what I'm going to do is start by loading up another instance of Anna 2, and I'm going to start by actually freezing the first Anna. So just take a second. All right, so I'm going to start by loading up another instance of Anna 2. Right, so first off, with this sound in particular, I'm going to load up a kick wavetable. So I'm just gotta find this real quick. It should be, let's see. "2D Kick 1." Yeah, so I really like this. It's kind of like a really kind of gritty kick drum sound. So I really like using this because it'll do its job for being the exciter for the effect I choose to use. So basically going to take down the amp envelope here. Short cut off here. Then what I'm going to do next is take basically the porta and move it to be about 110 to 112. Let's see. So kind of be more bendy, and then switch this setting right here to slide. Oh, and don't forget mono. There we go. Okay, cool. So, next thing, in terms of this sort of style of sound design. So basically, you can sort of change the waveform of this, and it'll kind of completely change the feel of the sound when it comes to effects-driven sound design. So next what I'm going to do is load up a phaser, give it sort of like a metallic-y sort of sound when you put the feedback up. And I'm going to drive the feedback to about 0.90. So kind of hear that phaser kicking in right here. Personally, I like to switch this to what they call space. I believe it's more technically like a plus and minus, similar to flangers, but I personally like using space because it gives you more of that metal sound as opposed to that more squarish sort of feel. I'll push the poles up to 8. You start to hear it. So yeah, so next I'm gonna drive the envelope up. You get kind of this interesting, it's almost hollow sound to it. So yeah, then after that, we're gonna duplicate this again actually, just to make everything a lot more resonant. Now it's like really hollow. You're starting to kind of feel that almost like metallic sort of interesting effects driven sound design feel that I've been talking about. So I'm going to group these together and basically go to the macros and map the frequency to the first one. I'm going to do both of the frequencies. But the key here is to have one a little bit off from the other one. So in this case, it's going to be sort of like, let's see, maybe doing the first one at about just slightly off, so about 73 hertz as opposed to the 70. So you kind of get this sound. As you can tell, mine's a little jumpy right now, just because of the CPU I'm using up, but do not be concerned because I will be implementing the automation, which will make everything sound a lot smoother. So it sounds very weak right now. The patch is very like uncompressed, unsaturated. So what I'm going to start by doing is sort of just closing these up. And now we just kind of have this feel. I'm going to start by adding classic overdrive, pushing up the drive and the tone all the way to 100%, and keeping the dynamics both at 50, but and basically everything else in the stock, but pretty much just trying to drive this through the roof. Right, so you kind of hear this, it's almost like bell sort of sound to it. So yeah, so next, after that, we're gonna kind of start compressing it and continuously compressing it until it's like this really meaty sound. So basically what I'm going to do after that is add an OTT. And I set my I set my multiband dynamics setting just to be OTT when you open it up, but there is a setting called OTT just in case you don't do that. So basically, it's starting to sound more and more compressed. I don't really change anything about this for this instance, but if you kind of want to, you can bring down the amount if you want it to be less intense, or change the bands a bit if you feel like it's too high end or anything. And after that, going to add an instance of saturator on the soft sign. Make sure to bring the drive up to 4.50 so it's more present. Right, so put on the soft clip here. Just gonna check back on these guys right here, just to see sort of everything. Yeah, all sounding good here. So it's a very weird style of sound design though. So basically next I'm going to continue by adding an EQ just to start fitting it in with everything else theoretically. So I'm going to cut some of the lows here. Actually, no, I'm not going to cut the lows here because I sort of want the lower harmonics to ring through, oddly enough. And I'll explain more once we start grouping the drop synths and processing them, what I'm going to do there. So turn that off, and then I'm going to bring down band 3 to about there. I do want to keep this sort of on the oversampling. Just because it's... Right, so basically I'm just going to double check Anna 2, make sure everything's going. Right. So, all right. So pretty much next, what I'm going to do is start to kind of draw in the drop synth pattern. Conveniently enough, just to save time and to keep the consistency of this tutorial, I already have a drop MIDI for this that I'm just going to drag in. But basically, I'm going to kind of walk you through what I was doing here. It's a little bit, like I said, like I keep saying, my style of production is very sporadic and very experimental. So a lot of times I won't do things conventionally. I won't stay in the key. Won't be on the standard notes. So in this case, pretty much I kind of started drawing in this very crazy and sporadic rhythmic pattern. It sounds a bit like this. So it's very very random, and basically what's going to fix that sound, because it almost sounds kind of like garbage right now, is automating the frequency of those phasers. One last thing I'm going to actually add before continuing with that is a dimension expander. There's a few different versions of this. If you don't have it, it's actually a free plugin. But there's other options to this, such as using stereo delays in a way that will widen the sound, using imagers, et cetera, et cetera. I personally really like Dimension Expander though, so you can get this in a lot of different synths. There is actually a Dimension Expander in Anna 2, which works very well, but the thing is I like putting this after, so that's why I use kind of an external third-party Dimension Expander, and I want to put this after the OTT, so it's not conflicting with the sound I'm trying to achieve. So just put this up here. So it sounds much wider now. So also to save more time and to keep the consistency of the song, I have the automation that I drew in here. As you could tell, again, very sporadic and crazy. Really had to finesse this to get the sound to sound right. So what I'm going to do is slightly toggle this, just so you can see that envelope open up there, and paste this on here. Let's see. See, as you can tell now, it's that very effects-driven sound design that I was talking about. And it does take a lot of experimentation to get to that point. But when you get there, it's really great to sort of experiment around with it and try to keep working at it and trying different versions of it so you can get like the sound you want. Secondly, most of the time when I do this style of sound design, I tend to resample this just so I can keep it consistent every time. But again, for the sake of this tutorial, I wanted to show you guys how I do it. So I wanted to kind of just run it through this way, just with MIDI. So let's hear this all in context of the track. So right here, we're gonna scroll up here and listen to the drop. So. When with certain sounds in this, you kind of have to go back in and re-pitch that phaser because it's not totally in tune with the rest of the track. So what you might want to do is kind of just go back in and just reshape the automation so so it'll all be in tune, because like I said, this type of sound design is very sporadic. So it's not like you're just dealing with standard soft synth FM where everything's tuned perfectly. It's more of like an experimental thing, and it deals with a lot of resampling, a lot of repitching, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I'm gonna move on to the next drop synth sound. It's doing a very similar thing. I did switch up the pattern a bit in the second drop. So again, I'm going to drag in that MIDI. Actually, first and foremost, duplicate this synth. I'm gonna freeze this one first, so just give it a second. All right, so like I said, I'm gonna duplicate the first instance of that drop lead, unfreeze it, and then delete this MIDI, then drag the second part, which there's a bit of a variation in this just because I like to kind of have the second drop contrast the first drop, and this adds for more of a climactic feel in the music. It adds for more just a variety, and I feel like people don't like hearing just copy paste drop. So I mean, technically I copy pasted it, but I switched it up so people can be more intrigued while listening to it. So this one is going to sound more like this. It's going to do a bit of a different thing. Right now that sounds a little bit like garbage, so I'm going to first off change the exciter, which is what I keep calling it, but that's sort of just another name for the oscillator in Anna 2, because it's exciting the effects. So I'm going to change that one to a different wavetable here, and I'm gonna find the one that I really like. Okay, Voco Bass Myrrh, I believe it's called, and It's a bit of a different sound to it. Very subtle difference there, but you could definitely tell once you implement all the automation. So just as an example here, just to show you kind of that automation though, before doing just the copy pasta sort of thing here, I'm going to just show a little bit of a demo of what you can do. It's very experimental. Like you have to kind of get in close to it and really mess with it. So yeah, so you kind of get the feel of what I'm sort of implying here. Yeah, so basically the next thing I'm going to do is just copy over that second drop automation that I have saved here, just so I don't have to go in and make it perfect because it is so kind of random. It's not doing anything. So the next thing, just kind of open this envelope up here, or automation, I should say. Copy these up here. All right, there we go. Yeah. Right, so as you can tell, there's a variety from the first one to the second one, due to the fact that I changed the initial wavetable as well as the pattern that I'm playing. So there's a difference there. So first drop. So in the second drop, has sort of this window wiping sort of feel to it, which I like a lot. I like stuff that almost represents real life sounds or real life organic sounds, and it brings a human quality to it. Because I feel like in electronic music, what's lost a lot of times is that organic feel, or that almost the chaos element to it. So that's what I really like about this style of sound design. I feel like a lot of other people can definitely get inspired by that as well. So just going to group these all together next, starting with the brass down to that group. I'm going to do a little bit more processing on the actual entirety of that group channel. So in this instance, I'm going to just first off add an OTT. Let's see. Yeah, onto the group here. So OTT. And then I don't want to fully compress it, so I'm going to bring the amount down to 50%. You know, and obviously that's all subjective. Do what you think sounds good. Like I know some guys that like using like 3 OTTs on things and just love the sound that it makes. And personally, I like stuff to kind of breathe a little bit more when it comes to like the individual tracks. So that's why I kind of like to tone down the OTTs a bit. I actually use a lot less OTTs than I am using in this project in particular. I just felt like it was fitting to this sort of style, so that's why I did it. Production in itself is still an art, so really try to push for that and try to build your tonal aesthetic that way. Make your own decisions. You know. So next I'm going to add this EQ8, again, oversampling on. I'm going to actually, because of the nature of these drop synths and the sounds and the kind of overall feel I want with this, I sort of want to switch the mode here as opposed to just a standard stereo EQ, to mono stereo. And what that does basically is it almost, the EQ functions in two realms almost of the sound. One's in the mono, just the center channel, and you can just cut out frequencies in the center channel, and one just works for the stereo, so whatever's sitting in stereo headphones. So what I like about this is it kind of lets it can let the crispiness of the high end only exist in the stereo field, and you can let that mono just kind of like, you can just cut out all those high end if you want to. If there's kind of too much high end, but you still want it to be there, it's good option for that. And also this is very handy for if you're trying to do things such as make DIY acapellas, because a lot of times the way songs are mixed is with the vocals sitting more in the mono or in the stereo, depending on what the song is. So sometimes it can be helpful for that. Not totally the best option, but a good one for sure. So I'm gonna cut this. Do basically the same thing with the stereo. Bring this guy down a little bit. And then don't want to take too much of those mids out or anything. Just kind of want to keep them as is. So let's see here. I'm gonna do a hard cut. Not too low, but maybe around like the 10, a bit above the 10K range. So maybe about like 12K, and we'll kind of hear how this sort of sounds in its entirety. Just gonna solo it though. Definitely gluing everything together a bit better. See, as you could tell before the OTT and before the EQ, there was a lot of low-end stuff going on, too much high-end, and what this sort of did was made everything a lot more consistent, but not too dominant on the high end or the low end or anything. So I feel like it's good in that sense. And as you could probably tell before, those phaser leads, those like weird leads that I made with Anna were way too quiet in comparison to everything else. But what this did now was kind of brought them more into the light of the entire drop. So in the context of everything, it is sitting a bit lower than everything, because what a lot of times the OTT does is it makes things a bit more quiet. You can obviously adjust the output gain of the OTT, but in this instance, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually just add a saturator to make everything a lot more warm. So I'm pretty much just going to do another soft sine saturator here and bring the drive up to 1.50 decibels with the soft clip on, so there's no peaking over the 0 in this case. Now those synths sit a lot more present in the mix and in the entirety of the song, so as you can tell. So let's just kind of listen, check on those reverse brass stabs, see if they're comfortably sitting. Yeah, I think they're sounding good. Let's just check on the drop one more time. So I'm just going to delete these little automation channels. So that concludes the drop synth part of this tutorial. Next, we're going to be talking about sidechaining. So stick around. Thanks.